The RC505 loop station made by Boss is one of the most popular tabletop loopers on the planet. Used by some of the most famous loopers in the world like Grez, Saro, MB14 and some world famous artists like Mark Rebier and Ariana Grande. But today we're here to talk about its successor, the RC505mk2. This lightweight device comes with 5 stereo tracks and 4 simultaneous input and track effects, which is what we're going to be looking at in this video today. I'm going to rank the best and the worst input and track effects based on my personal experience and based on how I've seen other loopers utilize them in their tracks. We'll go from S tier for maximum respect and F tier for... At the very end of this video, I'll tell you what I think is the very best effect on this device and what is the very worst.
Quick disclaimer, after recording 2 hours of my audio, I realized that the cable I used sometimes caused static or cut out my sound entirely, so my apologies for this.
So what are my criteria for scoring an effect higher or lower? How versatile is the effect? Does it serve only one purpose, or can you creatively apply it for more than what it appears to do on the surface?
How often does the effect actually get used? Effects that are too niche or have minimal impact on a track score lower. And lastly, my personal bias.
We'll go in order. So for the very first effect, we have the low pass filter. We're definitely starting off with a banger because this filter can be used for a variety of different things. By just playing with the rate, you can already get some interesting results when it's put on a sound, be it input or track effects. If you turn off the rate, you can take a more manual approach on how and when you want the filter to work. But it gets even more interesting and useful when you start experimenting with all the other parameters, especially the sequencer. With it, you're able to create more specific and original filter patterns. Turn up the resonance and you're even able to create melodies or bass notes depending on what number the cutoff parameter is at. You can use it for melodies and basses, you can use it for special effects, staking or creating tension, special patterns and textures, and you can even use it to improve your overall mix. Since I could say all the same things about the bandpass and high-pass filter, I will be ranking all of them in S tier.
Phaser is not something I personally use all too much, but nonetheless it offers some cool options for you.
Depending on what kind of vibe you're going for, Phaser can offer you the necessary details or atmosphere you might need in your track. Coming with parameters like rate, depth and resonance, you can already customize your sound more to what you want. If you want to tweak it even further, the manual, step rate and stage parameters are there for you to experiment with.
This effect also comes equipped with a customizable sequencer, so if you want more control over specific patterns in your phaser, the sequencer is an option.
The reason I don't use phaser all too much after the MK1 is because it always feels like the volume is fighting back. I know there's a D and E level parameter, but it always feels like the volume spikes a lot and I feel like I don't have too much control over it.
Apart from my personal bias, this effect can give you some cool atmospheric effects. It can switch up the vibe of a sound, and overall it has just some good customizable options. So I will be placing Phaser in B tier. Flanger is in my opinion very similar to Phaser. Not at all in sound, but more so in the critique I gave the Phaser effect.
Except I think it's a bit more versatile in the possibilities it gives you. It is quite a fragile effect, meaning you need to experiment a lot and control the effect before you can get anything good out of it. If you don't control the volume properly, like with Phaser, it could definitely result in some imbalances. I have this effect to thank for my track textures. So I will be placing Phaser, Flanger in A tier. With the synth effect, you have a lot less options in sound. In my opinion, synth has always sounded a bit more on the cheap side, and while it does offer some cool textures in combination with other effects, I don't think the effect is all too flexible. Mainly in my personal experience with synth, I always get a lot of frequencies with the effect that I already have in my mix, so it kind of just interferes. Like for instance, I have some really cool bass textures with the synth on it, but it doesn't matter all that much because it interferes with other frequencies in my mix. But you can also create some cool pew pew sounds with it, so you can try to use it like this.
I'm sure other people have had different experiences with the synth effect, but for me it will be going into C tier.
Lo-fi doesn't have a lot of parameters at all, but the ones you do get can drastically change up your sound.
Depending on what bit depth and sample rate you use, you can create 8-bit game effects, sharper bass lines, noisy, interesting vocals, and add a bit of character to your melodies.
When put on all tracks simultaneously, it can create a cool vibe and make a mess in the best way possible. All in all, lo-fi is really fun and easy to use, so for me, it will be going into A tier. I am not sure why radio exists. I feel like a simple high-pass filter can create the exact same effect. And while radio does offer slightly different textures on some sounds, I don't think it justifies being an effect entirely on its own. So for me, radio will be going into D tier. Ring mod is the perfect effect for adding to your sounds. A lower frequency can create some nice raspiness on your voice. Wow. If you find the right frequencies for a certain melody, it can add a lot to that melody. If you do so for a clean sub bass, it can give you a real smooth, satisfying effect. Ring modulation is nothing crazy, but it can offer cool new textures. B tier. Guitar to bass is still a viable effect if you want a nice, easy vocal bass, but I feel like in this day and age, it's really outdated among all of the other effect options we have now. Also, it has barely changed from its predecessor version. Barely any versatility, and I don't see it being used anymore almost at all. I know it's a classic, but I'm putting it in D tier. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not sure what Sustainer actually does. I know it can boost your overall sound, your highs, your lows, and I mainly use it for some of my kicks, but I've never really seen the point of the attack and release parameters. It's not bad, but I don't see many uses for it, so I will be putting it in C tier. I don't want to talk about slow gear, but auto riff, every time I've used it, it's been a huge pain in my ass. It doesn't sync with the metronome. Sound quality of it is bad. It's just overall not fun to use, and it feels too specific and niche to actually use. I'm sure there's some nerds out there that can properly utilize it, but I'm not one of them. So slow gear and auto riff will both be staying in F tier. Transpose is a classic and still fun to use if you know for what.
At first glance, it is useful to change the pitch of your voice, which it is, but if you use it creatively, it can offer some really cool melodies and chords.
Especially now with the upgraded version of Transpose, which has a sequencer. The sequencer offers you even more creative variety in how you can use different pitches. Transpose is a fun option if you want to switch your melody sound palette or if you want to play around with your voice on it. So, beat ear. Pitch bend kind of offers the same thing, but it can go way higher in pitch. If you use the effect more manually, there will be more of a glide between notes. And you'll also notice that there will be more specific notes in between the 0 and 100 values of the parameter bend. Pitch bend is something I have been personally experimenting with over the last year, and I've noticed more control, more variety, and more sound clarity compared to, for instance, Transpose. So for me, this effect will be going in high B tier. Next on the list is another classic effect, Robot. Just like guitar to bass, I feel like it's really outdated. It doesn't have an updated version from its predecessor version either. And the only new parameter, formant, makes your voice really unstable. I still think it's an interesting effect if paired with other effects, but on its own, it's low C tier. Electric is an auto-tune effect, and it's whack. It's the only auto-tune option we have, and it's not always fun to use. While yes, it does auto-correct your voice to certain pitches, the chromatic mode is really unstable, and if you put the key to a certain key, then you will be limited by the notes you're able to sing. I've also, for instance, heard from loopers like AVH that when you use electric live, some frequencies might come back and feedback into your microphone through the electric effect and change how your voice is supposed to sound. Apart from that, the shift and formant parameters can be really fun to play with, experiment with, but in my opinion suffer from the same thing that Robot suffers from, and that is that it makes your voice really shifty and unstable. That said, the effect does have its own specific use, and it still gets used by a ton of loopers, including myself. While I'm inclined to put it in D tier for its instability, I will be putting it in high C tier instead because of how much it still gets used for its main purpose. Harmonic Manual and Harmonic Auto. I'm not sure why these are split up in two different effects. They have almost exactly the same parameters and sound. They're very similar in use, so I will be putting both of them in the same tier. They can offer some amazing details on melodies and vocals, but like a lot of other effects on the MK2, they can be very, very inconsistent. Personally, I've always had a 50-50 experience with both harmonic effects. Depending on its use, it can vary greatly in how it sounds. Here's an example.
It would work, or it would make this sound.
Now that's mainly if you use it for more abstract ways than just for your vocals or your melodies. They don't offer amazing variety, and looking at the inconsistencies I've personally experienced with them, I will be putting both effects in C tier.
Vocoder has only one purpose, and it's not as relevant anymore like it used to be on the MK1. While it allows for some creative usage and dope textures, I feel like it's not as needed anymore with all the other existing effects.
I've only used it for one of my tracks, and that track is one I carried over from my MK1, so I think that says something. Vocoder is quite simple, and I don't see it being used anymore that often, so I will be putting Vocoder in D tier.
Actually, I will be putting Vocoder in D.
Oscillator M I will be putting straight into F tier, purely for the fact that people without a MIDI device can't even use it.
Imagine buying an acoustic guitar, but you can't even play it because you need a piano.
That said, I'm not super familiar with it, and I know Launchpad users like 808 Bannon or Rage have used it to its full capabilities. Oscillator Bot is an effect that took the beatboxing scene by storm. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you liked the video, please drop a like and consider subscribing, as it helps the channel out a lot. Also, a quick word from our sponsor. It's me. I'm the sponsor. If you use the MK2, stop scrolling. Most people get lost in the effects or recycle the same 3 sounds. That's why I offer my presets. Everyone kept asking me how I made my tracks, so I decided to share my knowledge. From this to this. Did I mention that my presets actually come with the tutorial? The offer is so good that even my grandma with a broken arm started looping. Hundreds of loopers are already leveling up with my presets, backed by tons of positive feedback. Download them, learn the tracks, and explore the sound design. Stop wasting time guessing, start looping like a pro and grab the presets now. An effect so overpowered and new, how could it possibly be fair? Oscillator Bot allows you to create melodies, basses, and chords just by making any kind of noise into the microphone. On paper, this seems really overpowered, and that's because it is.
It makes creating basses, chords, and melodies way easier, and it helps building up your song quicker as well.
I wanted to put Oscillator Bot in S tier, but I'm dropping it down to A tier for these 3 reasons. The sound coming from the effect always sounds quite plasticky, and if you listen closely, a lot of the notes have underlying notes or noise, which is not that enjoyable to listen to.
There's only 16 notes to play with, 17 or 18 if you get creative with certain loop station techniques. It's also a shame that there's no silent note. The highest we can go is G9, and it still creates an annoying noise in your melody, even if you want no note there.
It's made for one thing, generating notes. And for it to be truly useful and sound better, it needs to be paired with other effects. Preamp is a useful option to distort your sound.
There's multiple parameters to customize how your preamp sounds, but I feel like half of them don't impact your sound at all. That said, I do think it offers a nice variety of different sounding distortions.
The main parameters that I would use are bass, middle, treble, and the E level all the way at the end.
It has helped shape some of my and many others' tracks, so I will be putting it in A tier.
Distortion is a classic. The original vocal distortion effect on the MK1 was quite one-dimensional. However, with 6 different distortions on the MK2, it offers you a way greater variety of sounds you can experiment with.
It also comes with a few extra parameters that truly define how your distortion will sound.
It's easy to use, it gets used by tons of loopers, and it has a place close to my heart. So I will be putting distortion in A tier. Dynamics is an effect that compresses your sound.
I've only ever used it on my vocal mix, but it can be utilized on many different kinds of sounds, depending on what kind of sound that you want. While it's not a bad effect at all, and I do frequently use it for my vocals, there's not a lot of variety to it, so dynamics will be going into D tier.
EQ, aka
The equalizer.
if you have struggles with your mix or some of your sounds don't sound exactly the way you want them to, EQ might be the effect that you need. It has helped shape the sound of my voice, my drums, some melodies of mine, and it might be one of the most useful effects on the MK2.
Unfortunately, it's not as varied as some other effects, so I will be putting EQ in low E tier. E tier. A tier.
I don't even want to talk about Isolator because of how quickly I scroll past it every time. I've tried to use it on multiple occasions, but I feel like it's way too much of a specific niche effect to actually be useful.
It isolates frequencies and it has a sequencer, so for very specific mix purposes, I can see it having value.
Personally, it's not for me, and I don't know anyone who it has been useful for, so Isolator will be going in F tier. Next on the list, there's Octave. With it, you can go down 1 or 2 octaves or both at the same time. It creates a bit more depth in your sound and also low end. And personally, I think it sounds quite cool. I don't use it much because usually it just creates more mud in my mix. I can see the use for it and the variety it can bring to your sound, so I'm putting it in C tier. Autopan, an effect that automatically pans your sound from left to right depending on how you automate it. Simple, easy to use, good for creating variety in your sound, and also useful for your mix. I'll be putting it in low B tier. If you want a bit more manual control, manual pan is the way to go. Believe it or not, I just found out that there's a sequencer to manual pan, which immediately bumps up the usefulness for me. If I'm not mistaken, that means you'll have even more depth of the pan and when it activates, so I will be putting manual pan right above auto pan in B tier.
Stereo Enhance is mainly useful for very specific mix purposes, and it can sound quite plasticky if used incorrectly. Low C tier. Tremolo, on the other hand, has a bit more purpose.
It can chop up your sound in varying patterns, and it can also serve as a sidechain to support the mix. If you use the sequencer, you'll have more unique patterns that you can make yourself, or even different sidechaining possibilities. While I use Tremolo a lot, the effect isn't as multi-purpose as a lot of other effects, so I'll be putting Tremolo in B tier.
I've never caught myself using Vibrato for anything other than a funny, wobbly voice. It's used for tweaking certain sounds and giving them more shape. It has a bit more of a phasery effect, and in my opinion, it doesn't have too many uses. And I just don't use the effect at all, to be honest. I'm putting Vibrato in D tier.
Next up, we have Pattern Slicer. 20 different patterns, and playing with the rate creates even more variety in those patterns. It's easy to use and experiment with, but half the patterns will probably end up never being used because of how specific they are. Its main extra feature that the other slicer doesn't have is adjusting the attack, which changes how loudly the slicer physically attacks you.
Come on. Shit, I'm fucking stuck. There we go.
Pattern Slicer is a fun option. Emphasis on option. High C tier. Step Slicer, on the other hand, it can chop up your sound in varying patterns, and it can also serve as a sidechain to support the mix. If you use the sequencer, you'll have more unique patterns that you can make yourself, and also more specific sidechaining possibilities. Wait, isn't this exactly what I said about Tremolo? While I use the slicer a lot, it's not as multi-purpose as some other effects, so B tier. Delay puts a nice little delay on your sound.
At surface level, it just puts a delay on your sounds, but if you use it creatively, it can also be used to create some diverse drum patterns.
It's quite one-dimensional, but definitely not useless, so I'm putting it in high C tier.
I'm putting in high C tier, actually.
Panning delay does the exact same thing, except it's panned.
Every little delay gets panned from left to right, which causes a lot more atmosphere and variety in your mix.
Again, quite a one-dimensional effect, but I slightly prefer it over the normal delay, so low B tier. Reverse delay delays your sound in reverb. I can see the uses for it if you have specific ideas on how you want your sound to sound, or if you have a certain atmospheric idea, but since I rarely hear it and I personally never use it myself, I'm putting it in D tier. I have all the same critique for mod delay. I also have all the same critique for tape echo 1 and 2, but since I do quite like the effect that both effects give, and seeing that it's so distinct from a normal delay, I'm putting it in low C tier. Here's another classic, granular delay. What used to be our only option for piano melodies and basses is now just a cool option in between all other options. I still quite frequently use this effect for a nice bass line, but other than that, not too much. It's still a nice option for some variety, and I still see it being used quite a bit, especially for basses, so I'm putting it in high B tier. Twist. An effect that has become so mainstream in building extra tension during a build-up that it's almost difficult not to use. Letting any sound go through it starts creating a rising effect that's perfect for any kind of build-up. Unless you get weird enough to get any kind of other use out of it, I don't see any other use for it. So, high B tier. Roll 1 has the same effect as a normal delay, and I don't understand Roll 2. F tier. Good night. Jokes aside, roll 1 can stay in F tier, but roll 2 works in a weird way. You only turn on the effect after you've made a sound, because it only starts rolling after. It has a unique application, and I can see it working for something. Very vague, I know. Low D tier. Chorus can be a nice addition to your songs to make something sound a bit more full. The effect has a few parameters to tweak the chorus to how you want it to sound. It can be incredibly nice on your melodies, it can give your voice a bit more depth, and in some rare cases can even be useful on some of your bass lines. If you play around with the rate a bit, you can get more of a detuned effect or even something more alien-like. It doesn't offer a great variety of purposes, but it is a useful tool and no doubt a classic. Chorus is going in B tier. Just like chorus, reverb offers that extra depth in your sound designing. Not that flexible in what it can do, but what it does is more than enough to be useful. Reverb is widely used by everyone, and it creates that extra atmosphere on melodies, chords, vocals, some drums. It can also be used for other major sounds like crashes, and in some in-depth cases, basses.
That's called motherfucking bars, nigga!
But that's a more underlying use of it. Not super diverse, but seeing that it's in use by a lot of people, it will be going in low A tier. Gate reverb and reverse reverb. I remember with the release of the MK2 that there was such a big hype around these two extra reverbs, but after using this device for 4 years, I can confidently say that both have been lackluster for me. While yes, both of them can have some cool effects in certain scenarios, both of them always feel boring to use, and I feel like I don't end up gaining enough of a benefit from them. For this reason, I'm putting both of them in D tier. That's it for all possible input effects. But we're not done quite yet. Among all 53 effects on this device, there's 4 of them that can only be used on the track effects. Let's get right into these last 4 effects. The first effect after reverse reverb is beat scatter. The 4 different patterns can offer a nice variety on some of your sounds by scattering your beats around, as the name suggests. You can use it creatively for build-ups, extra details, or different patterns altogether. It's not as diverse as an effect, but I'm still putting it in B tier because it's fun. accessible, and it still gets used quite frequently. The second track effects only effect is beat repeat. This effect specifically repeats whatever sound you decide to activate it on, which can be more of a pain to use. If you press slightly too late or slightly too early, you might not have the desired effect. Despite that, it's still a great option to build up with or to create some variations with, especially with the rewind, especially with the forward, rewind, and mix options. Beat repeat will be going in low B tier. Second to last, we have beat shift.
This effect, yeah, I'm gonna say it, shifts your beats.
Please tell me if you find a different use for it other than the tiny variations you're able to create with it. I don't see it being used that often, and it doesn't have that much of a variation, especially compared to beat scatter or beat repeat. So I'll be putting it in D tier. Now last, but definitely not least, another classic, vinyl flick.
Who doesn't love vinyl flick? I sure do. It's fun and easy to use, and for how simple the effect is, there's still a great variety of things you can do with it.
You can imitate a vinyl scratching effect, make cool sounding slowdowns, you can adjust note or chord progressions, and you can do the Saro technique. For such a classic and compact effect, it's dope. Ending the effect tier list on a banger, we're putting vinyl flick in low A tier. If I had to pick one effect to be the best of the best, it would have to be filter. It's the only effect I put in S tier, and with very good reason. I could make a whole song just with filter. In fact, I will. You would think picking the worst of the worst would be an easy task, but it's difficult only picking one. I would put slow gear in the worst of the worst, but it still has that memeable factor going on for it. So for the worst of the worst, I will be going for warp. I genuinely don't understand why this effect exists. If anyone in the comments section has a use or love for it, please let me know. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you haven't liked or subscribed yet, please do. It helps the channel out a lot, and it will help me improve as a content creator as well. If you like my content, you can check out this video next. And without further ado, I'll see you in the next video.